I recently walked away from a well-paying corporate job without a new job lined up, and today I'm going to share the exact framework I used to make this decision. This was by far the hardest decision of my entire life, and it was not because I had to let go of my paycheck. The real challenge is actually the psychological part, leaving a path that looks perfect on paper, but you dread waking up to every day. People going from seeing you as successful to seeing you as a confused failure. And the overwhelming concept of having to create your own identity instead of tying it to an impressive title. If you're in a similar situation and you're debating back and forth, this may resonate with you. I had what most people would call a dream career. I worked for a prestigious international firm and served impressive clients on an everyday basis. I got there the traditional way: good grades, law school, and hard work. And for a lot of people, this path works perfectly. But as I progressed through it and saw the sacrifices that people around me were making for it, I started doubting it. I started realizing that this career wasn't aligned with what I wanted to get out of my life. And while I am okay with making sacrifices, your time is the only resource you can't get more of. And sacrificing all of that for a firm that doesn't align with my values and that won't take me closer to my goals, it's not what I had in mind for the rest of my life. And that is regardless of titles, bonuses, or paychecks. Working with wealthy clients, I picked up on a lot of interesting things. And maybe that's why I stayed for so long. I found it really interesting to work with these clients and learn what their problems were. The biggest thing that I picked up was something that they never even talked about. They all lived under the general assumption that they could do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Freedom wasn't negotiable. It was built into the lives they had created for themselves. At the same time, I had all this prestige tied to me, but I still had to ask for permission to do basic things concerning my private life. During COVID, working from home gave me space I hadn't had in years. And I rediscovered the passions that I used to have when I was younger, but I had since a long time put on the shelf in favor of law school and work. I learned a lot of new skills and realized that I could actually make money outside of employment. The more I grew personally, the more I realized how constrained my work life had become, and I felt like I was owned by my work. It was the straight opposite of the autonomy that I valued. I stayed at this firm for about 7 years. The everyday life there was fine, but it was slowly stealing my life away from me and my potential to do bigger things. Most of this time, I was kept waiting for the international opportunities that were promised to me before I even started at the company, but I never got. For the next promotion, the next bonus, the next salary increase, there was always a new milestone that I felt like I had to wait for. I realized that when someone keeps moving the goalposts, they probably have no intention of letting you reach them. And I was doing the same thing as I kept waiting for my own permission to follow my dreams. I realized that a job that looks good on the outside may not be equal to having a great life. And I was working around clients who had engineered amazing lives for themselves. And here I was, giving up everything for a paycheck that wouldn't be able to change my life anyway. My last year became an interesting study in misalignment. I was overloaded with work that was somehow both above and below my pay grade at the same time. I realized that what I liked most about my job was my salary. And don't get me wrong, financial stability is really important to me, and freedom and independence is one of those things I value the most in life. But I started questioning whether this was the right way to achieve it, especially since I was giving up so much of my autonomy for it. What finally tipped me over the edge was looking at the people above me, the people who had come further in this career than I had. I realized that I did not want their life. And if I don't want their life, what am I even doing here? I wanted to feel like I could afford switching off, which wasn't the case in this role. And while I have so much respect for my colleagues and my superiors, and I admire the work they do every day, I still don't want that for myself. That's when I realized that the real question is not whether I could afford to leave. It was whether I could afford to stay. We only have one life, and it's up to us to make the most of it. To gain clarity of what I actually wanted to get out of my life, I developed this framework: 6 questions that will help you think clearly about what you want to get out of your life, instead of what you think you should want. So the first question was freedom and optionality, 2 things that are very close to my heart. Does the choice of me quitting give me more or less freedom and optionality in life. For me personally, my job wasn't very aligned with having freedom. I was tied to an office in a single location. I felt tied to other people's expectations of me. I felt tied to their schedules. The culture that I was part of had high availability expectations and a lot of urgent deadlines that rarely felt necessary. While the salary did give me short-term independence, I also realized that at the same time I was giving up the possibility of long-term independence for myself, family, and future generations by giving away all my time to a 9-to-5 with a salary cap. Question 2, growth and learning. Will this expand what I'm capable of, or will it just make me more efficient in my everyday tasks? And this was a bit painful to admit, because I was getting really good at my job. And I was very comfortable with being good at my job. And I also enjoyed being seen as someone who knew what she was doing. But at the same time, I had interests and capabilities that felt unexplored, things that felt very much aligned with who I was as a person, and that would give me the possibility of obtaining more freedom down the line. And I wanted to scale these interests in a way that wasn't possible alongside my job. Question 3, authenticity. Does this really feel like me, or am I performing a role? The professional environment that I was in required a specific version of myself, the corporate lawyer version. It required a specific language, particular behaviors, particular interests, and ways of showing up to other people. It also required sacrificing a lot of myself to be what these people wanted me to be. I was optimizing for fitting in rather than being myself. But the thing is, I've realized that all the people that I admire in life are people who dared to step away from the crowds and do what actually felt authentic to them. Question 4, time and energy. Will I look back at this time with satisfaction, or will it just be years that have passed? I kept thinking about whether I was actually happy with my life. Was I building towards something that I actually enjoyed and appreciated, or was I just passing by day, not feeling anything really? The thing that really stressed me out, and that very few other people talk about in these contexts, are family. I realized that this career did not align well with having a family, and that I did not want to be one of the parents that I have observed for so many years, who were constantly struggling between showing up for their careers and being there for their kids. After seeing so many stressed parents struggle with pickup hours from kindergarten and having to work late nights to compensate for leaving early to pick their kids up, I knew that I did not want to be the parent who had to live like this. I did not want to show my children that this is how life is supposed to be lived. I want to have a healthy balance between life and work, where I am in charge. Question 5, relationships. Does this connect me with people who inspire me? My colleagues and bosses were really nice people most of the time, but most of our conversations were around billable hours and client developments and sacrificing ourselves to serve our clients. I really wanted to be able to build deeper connections instead of our common goal of sacrificing our lives for the workplace. Question 6, and I believe this is the most important one. Does this move me in the direction where I actually want to go in life? Or is it just what's expected for me by parents, by bosses, by people around me in general who are used to seeing me show up in a certain way? Because their expectations are not the foundation for how you should show up and behave. Remember that it's your life, and everyone lives primarily to serve themselves. They would not change for you, and you should not sacrifice what you want to be a certain person in their eyes. If they really care about you, and if they really want what's best for you, they are going to appreciate you and stay with you, regardless of what method you choose for making money. I really appreciated being seen as a lawyer, and I appreciated the status that comes with it. But I still have my skills. I can still practice any day I want, and I still use those skills on an everyday basis. The title that I had doesn't show who I am as a person. If staying wasn't gonna get me where I wanted to go in life, then what am I doing there? Every day I spent there meant one day less of pursuing what I actually wanted in life. I could not afford to lose any more time. Overall, I plan my exit carefully, both when it comes to finances, relationships, and the practical matters. The thing with these decisions is that there is never a good time. There will never be a good time. You just have to go for it and trust yourself that you will work it out along the way. I had saved a runway to be able to do something like this for a long time, because I realized early on that I actually want the possibility of pursuing something else. But going from having that runway to actually using it are two really different things. So it took a lot of courage to actually take this step. I remember my resignation conversation so clearly. It is probably the conversation I remember the most from my 7 years at that workplace. It was an early morning, and I managed to get my boss and I in a private room for about 15 minutes before she had to run off to her next meeting. I cut to the chase quickly, because once you have decided to go for something like this, you just want to get it over with as soon as possible. When I said that I want to explore other options outside of the firm that I was currently at, she was very surprised, and she could not fathom that I was quitting without having a new job lined up. And that is just how lawyers are in general. They are very risk averse, and they have spent their entire careers minimizing risk. But it did reinforce my decision of leaving. Their reaction showed me how different our perspectives on life choices were. While I wanted to take a risk, bet on myself, and step into the unknown, they couldn't even grasp the idea of letting go of the prestige and the paycheck. Their surprised reactions reinforced that I was doing the right thing. Because if you already know that you don't want their life, why would you take their advice? During the following 3 months, because a resignation period in Sweden is 3 months long, which is a very draining time to be at a workplace when people know that you are quitting, but you still haven't quit. You are kind of like a ghost to them. They are nice and casual to you, but at the same time, they are also moving on from having you there, and you are also moving on. So it becomes this awkward middle ground. And at the same time, everyone was questioning why I was quitting. And I just kept saying that this is what I wanted for myself. Because most of all, I needed space and clarity to think. So this begs the question of what's next for me. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I don't know. And that's the whole point. For once in my life, I can't predict what it looks like by looking at my older colleagues. For the first time, I feel like I am in charge of my path, and I plan to make the most of it. A part of me still feels like a failure for not following through. It hurts to admit to myself that I disappointed people by making this move and by choosing a non-linear career path, but at the same time, what people want from me is the choice that serves them personally and aligns with their own life choices. It hurts to give up, even though I know it was the right decision for me. Because not giving up in this case would mean 30 more years of living a life that I did not want to live, and I would be trading the life and the potential that I could have for it. So sometimes you just got to make the hard choice. Going forward, I know that I want to build something that aligns better with my personal values. I also know that I want to help those of you who are in similar situations. But after spending a few months outside of my comfort zone and just embracing the uncertainty that an unpredictable life has to offer and the freedom that comes with it, I think it is safe to say that you don't need to have everything figured out to do something like this. And the more clarity and space you get to think for yourself without the noise of other people, I believe that you will find the right path eventually. But giving myself time to actually do this was the best gift that I could ever give to myself. People say that you are the average of the 5 people closest to you. I was a bit skeptical to this at first, but after getting out of that lawyer job, I realized how true it is. Because I've changed a lot as a person just in these few months. And I do think that the person that I'm becoming is far more aligned with who I want to be. And I'm very excited to see what life has in store now. And while the right path will look different for everyone, I hope that this video will give you the permission you need to actually explore your own path. If any of this resonates with you, I would love to continue the conversation. And I've also started a newsletter where I will share more about this unconventional path and my everyday learnings from it. And you can find the link to subscribe to this in the description down below. Going forward, I will also be sharing more of this on YouTube, challenges and everything. So if you are curious about stepping out of the traditional path, or if you're just interested in continuing these types of conversations, make sure to subscribe, and we'll talk more in the next one.